You really believe your 401k is going to make you rich? Not comfortable, not retire at 67 and downsize. Rich. Because that's the fairy tale, right? Max it out, set it, forget it, trust the market, wait 40 years, and magically you wake up wealthy. A 401k is a retirement savings plan offered by many American employers that allows employees to save and invest for their future with tax advantages. Here's the problem. As of 2026, the average 401k balance for Americans in their 30s isn't even remotely close to financial freedom. For people in their 40s and 50s, still not impressive. And that's before inflation takes its quiet little bite every single year. Nobody likes to say this part out loud. The 401k was built to replace pensions. It was not built to make you wealthy. It was not built to give you options at 45. It was built to keep you invested. Period. If your entire financial strategy is one tax-advantaged account and blind optimism about the S&P 500, that's not a plan. That's autopilot. And autopilot works great until turbulence hits. I've watched long-term investors panic sell the second the market drops 25%. I've watched people lose years of gains because nobody explained how the system actually works. So if your retirement strategy is basically hope, HR paperwork, and vibes, we need to talk, because the math today is not the math your parents were sold. And once you see the numbers, you're never going to look at your 401k the same way again. To understand why so many people overestimate their 401k, we need to rewind a bit. The 401k wasn't born as a master plan for American wealth creation. It showed up in the Revenue Act of 1978 as a technical amendment to the tax code. Section 401k. A way to defer taxes on certain types of compensation. That's it. No grand retirement revolution. No master blueprint for financial freedom at 55. It was meant to be a supplement. Because at the time, the backbone of retirement in America was the pension. A defined benefit plan. You worked 25 or 30 years for a company, and in exchange, they promised you a fixed income for life after retirement. They managed the investments. They carried the market risk. If the market dropped 30%, that wasn't your sleepless night. It was theirs. The company was effectively the portfolio manager. Then something shifted in the late 70s and 80s. Companies realized something financially elegant. It's much cheaper to promise a contribution than a guaranteed outcome. Instead of guaranteeing you $4,000 a month for life, they could say, "We'll match 3% of your salary. Good luck." And slowly, not overnight, but steadily, pensions declined in the private sector. By the time we reach 2026, traditional defined benefit pensions are rare outside government jobs and a few legacy industries. The supplement became the main plan. Now we have defined contribution plans. Notice the wording shift. Defined benefit means the outcome is defined. Defined contribution means the input is defined. And the outcome is your problem. Market risk, yours. Longevity risk, yours. Inflation risk, yours. Sequence of returns risk, also yours. Congratulations! You're now the chief investment officer of your own retirement fund. And here's the dry irony. The largest transfer of retirement responsibility in modern financial history was rebranded as empowerment. You weren't given a guaranteed paycheck for life. You were given a login portal. Now, to be clear, the 401k isn't evil, it's tax-advantaged. Employer matches are valuable. It's a useful tool, but it was never engineered to single-handedly produce wealth. It was designed to supplement a pension, and then the pension quietly disappeared. So, when people treat their 401k like it was custom-built to make them financially free by 50, they're misunderstanding its original purpose. And misunderstanding the system is where the math starts to fall apart. Let's talk about the numbers nobody actually talks about. The raw balances. The ones that make you pat yourself on the back and think, yeah, I'm on track. Here's the landscape in 2026. Under 30, around $15,000. 30s, about $50,000. 40s, roughly $110,000. 50s, close to $200,000. 60 and over, around $225,000. Looks decent at first glance, right? But let's do some real math. Scenario 1. The average contributor. Say you're 40 with the average 401k balance of $110,000. If you continue contributing at the same modest pace, bare minimum to get the employer match, your balance might grow to only around $250,000 by retirement. Factor in inflation at 3% per year, and that $250K buys what would cost about $150,000 in today's dollars. Divide that over 25 to 30 years of retirement, and your monthly income is barely above $500–600, not enough to live comfortably. Scenario 2. Joe, the maximalist. Now meet Joe, 40, a mid-level project manager who maxes out contributions at $24,500 per year. Over 25 years, assuming steady 7% market returns, his balance could grow to roughly $1,000. Factor in inflation at 3% per year, and in today's dollars, that's about $600,000–650,000. Better, but still far from the luxury retirement people imagine. And don't forget the tax bite. At a 25% tax rate on withdrawals, Joe is left with only around $450,000–490,000 in spending power. That's the real number he can actually spend. By 65, even with steady contributions, Joe's 401k will only cover a fraction of his dream lifestyle. Vacations, healthcare, emergencies, all on top of that, and suddenly, on track, looks more like, hope you enjoy generic cereal for dinner.
Oh, and let's not forget the cherry on top, the tax time bomb waiting at the end of this 40-year tunnel. All that growth you've been watching quietly compound. Uncle Sam wants his slice, and it can be surprisingly big. Here's the deal. The money in your traditional 401k is pre-tax, which means you're saving and investing with gross dollars. You never actually paid income tax on it.
But when you retire and start withdrawing, the government taxes those withdrawals at whatever rates exist at that time. That means if you have $1 million in your 401k at retirement, a 25% tax rate leaves you with only $750. And that's assuming the rates don't rise, which historically they tend to do. In other words, you're working with gross numbers now, but spending net numbers later. And the difference can be shocking. It gets trickier. Inflation will continue to erode purchasing power. Even if your $750K is on paper a fortune, in today's dollars, it may feel closer to $450–500Ks. Add unexpected healthcare costs, lifestyle expenses, or market hiccups, and suddenly your comfortable retirement lifestyle shrinks dramatically. This is why relying solely on a 401k is risky. You're essentially building wealth on a foundation where part of it will inevitably be claimed by taxes. Your hard-earned dollars will be reduced, sometimes by a quarter or more, before you even touch them. Understanding this is crucial. The 401k grows, yes, but it doesn't grow tax-free. You're just deferring the bill. Some strategies, like contributing to a Roth 401k or a Roth IRA, let you pay taxes up front and withdraw tax-free later, sidestepping the worst of the tax time bomb. But very few people maximize this option. The math changes dramatically. The same $1 million could leave you with $1 million in spending power if it's in Roth accounts, instead of $750K or less. In short, the growth of your 401k isn't just about compounding returns, it's about how much you actually get to keep and spend. Ignoring taxes and inflation is like looking at a Ferrari in your driveway, but forgetting it's only 25% yours to drive. The lesson: looking at raw balances without context is misleading. 110K at 40 feels solid. In reality, it's barely enough to retire comfortably if you actually want to live like an adult in your golden years. And that's why most people stop doing the math. The numbers are not terrifying. They're just humbling. You're not failing. You're just realizing the system wasn't designed to make you rich, only to keep you participating. So yes, the averages are data, but the truth is in the real purchasing power, the math behind it, and the tax bite waiting patiently at the finish line. Here's where the 401k story gets a little inconvenient. The structural problem isn't one big leak. It's 1,000 tiny punctures that quietly eat away at your future. And most people don't notice until it's too late. First, contributions. Even with the IRS bumping limits to $24,500 for 2026, the majority of people contribute far less, often just enough to get the employer match. That's why the average 401k balances remain modest, even decades into a career. Cute, right? That's like putting a single drop of water in a swimming pool and calling it hydration. Over decades, small contributions might add up, eventually. But if you're starting late or earning modestly, it's like trying to fill a bathtub with a teaspoon while someone else is siphoning water out. Slow, frustrating, and underwhelming. Next, market volatility. The S&P doesn't care about your timeline, your peace of mind, or your Friday mood.
And yet, in 2026, a surprising number of investors still panic sell during corrections. Market drops 10%, and suddenly the long-term plan looks like a disaster movie. They sell at the bottom, sit on the sidelines while everyone else recovers, then buy back in when everything is expensive again. That's not investing. That's handing your money to someone with a spreadsheet and a smile.
Emotional investing. This is the silent killer. Checking balances multiple times a day, reacting to every headline, reading Reddit threads about the latest crash. If your decisions are driven by fear or hype, congratulations. You just turned yourself into your own worst enemy.
The behavior gap, what people should do versus what they actually do, is massive, and yes, it's still alive in 2026. It's like being handed a Ferrari and deciding to drive it through the mud just to see what happens. And fees, administrative fees, record-keeping fees, expense ratios, decimals, seemingly harmless. 0.5%, 1%, 1.5%, cute numbers. But over 30 years, a 1% fee can quietly eat almost 25% of your nest egg. It's like renting a penthouse every month and letting the landlord live in it. Put it all together. Small contributions, market volatility, emotional reactions, and hidden fees. And your set it and forget it 401k starts to look a lot like a DIY kit for a 747 with no manual, no co-pilot, and a hurricane outside. Not because the system is rigged, but because it was never designed to carry the full weight of your retirement. Relying solely on a 401k? It's convenient, tax-advantaged, might get you somewhere, but structurally, you've handed almost every variable over to the market, your emotions, and a tiny employer contribution. And as 2026 proves, many investors are still quietly losing money, not in a crash, not in a recession, but in the slow grind of small contributions, fees, and panic-driven behavior. If you're still treating your 401k as a passive set-it-and-forget-it tool, you're not an investor. You're a passenger on a plane with no pilot, a cup of lukewarm coffee, and someone else holding the flight manual upside down. Here's the funny thing. Being smart doesn't automatically protect you from making dumb mistakes with your own money. In fact, intelligence can make it worse. The 401k is a tool built for a robot, but it's being operated by a primate with a smartphone. Even savvy, careful, financially literate people fall into the same traps. Why? Because our brains are wired for short-term survival, not 40-year retirement plans. Behavioral finance gives it fancy names, but the reality is simple. We are our own worst enemy. Loss aversion. We hate losing more than we like winning. That $10,000 drop in your account feels like a punch to the gut, even if you've made $50,000 over the last decade. And when the market dips 15%, you feel that sting acutely. So what do most people do? They sell at the bottom, hoping to protect what's left. Spoiler, they aren't protecting anything. They're just paying a massive premium to stop feeling anxious for 5 minutes. Herd behavior. We like to think we're independent thinkers, but let's be honest. When everyone on your feed is panicking or celebrating the latest hot stock, your brain starts itching. You feel like you're missing out. Suddenly, you're moving your allocation into whatever was trending 6 months ago, right before the smart money rotates out. Classic trap. Overconfidence. This is the part where you convince yourself that because you read 3 articles on a plane, you can time the market perfectly. You think you'll jump out before the crash, jump back in at the exact bottom. Nobody does that consistently. Not in 2026, not ever. Yet the illusion of control is intoxicating. Meet Mark. He's 35, works in finance, reads the news daily, and thinks he's rational. Market dips 15% in a month. He panics, sells his 401k holdings, and waits on the sidelines. A year later, the market recovers. Mark missed it all. Smarter than most, but his own instincts just cost him thousands. And he thought he was being cautious. Here's the catch. Knowing what you should do doesn't make it easier. Your brain doesn't care about spreadsheets or retirement projections. It cares about the immediate sting.
And that's why behavioral mistakes quietly erode accounts, decade after decade, even for people who are too smart to fall for that. So yes, the biggest obstacle to a successful 401k isn't the market. It's your mind, your instincts, your need to check the portal every 5 minutes, your herd mentality, your overconfidence. If you don't have a system to override your own biological programming, congratulations, you're a spectator in your own financial life, watching your retirement plan run itself into potholes while you scroll Twitter. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Your 401k is a tool, not a strategy. It's a tax-advantaged container, a high-end toolbox. Treating it as a full solution is like buying the fanciest hammer and expecting the house to build itself while you binge-watch Netflix. The math behind your projected retirement assumes a lot, and in 2026, these assumptions are increasingly fragile. 1. Steady employment. 40 years of uninterrupted work? In today's world, that's a stretch. AI, restructuring, layoffs. A 15-year career can disappear with a Friday afternoon email. Lose your job, and suddenly you're tapping that 401k to cover rent, mortgage, or medical bills. Every dollar you withdraw now is compounding power stolen from your future self. 2. Consistent contributions. Life isn't linear. Expenses spike, health emergencies happen, recessions arrive. Check your own history. Most people's contributions look like a heart monitor. Up during good years, flatline during downturns. Miss a few years, and you've quietly sabotaged decades of growth. 3. Perfect long-term discipline. Markets don't trend politely. Emotional reactions, panic selling, or even waiting for the right moment quietly erode balances. And let's be honest, human nature isn't exactly in sync with spreadsheets and retirement projections. By 2026, we've already seen multiple pullbacks since 2024, many paused contributions until things settled.
By the time things settled, the recovery had already happened. And guess what? They missed the only part of the cycle that actually builds wealth. So yes, a 401k can help you accumulate wealth, but only if everything goes exactly as planned. Perfect employment, perfect discipline, no emergencies, no interruptions. And spoiler alert, that almost never happens. If your entire financial future hinges on this one account, that's where the system quietly leaves you exposed. You're relying on a plan that assumes life is linear, markets are polite, and your brain doesn't exist. The point isn't to scare you, it's to be realistic. Your 401k is a tool, a good one, but it can't carry you through life's curveballs alone.
Layoffs, health expenses, recessions, unexpected bills, all of these quietly chip away at the perfect plan that the system assumes you'll execute flawlessly. If you're asking yourself whether your 401k is on track, stop. Ask yourself instead, what happens to my life if the track disappears? So, what actually works if the set it and forget it 401k dream is a mathematical hallucination? What actually works? The truth. A single account, even a maxed 401k, is not enough. You need multiple levers of control, not just hope. 1. Income and contributions. First, increase your income, but in ways that actually fit your life. It's not about a lottery ticket or a miracle promotion. Side projects, freelance work, skill-based gigs, even small incremental income can meaningfully increase contributions. If money is tight, focus on maxing what you can contribute within your means, especially taking advantage of employer matches and tax-advantaged accounts like Roth 401k or Roth IRA. These give you tax-free growth, protecting against the tax bomb at retirement. Second, diversify your income streams.
One paycheck is fragile. Multiple streams, freelance, royalties, passive projects provide flexibility when life throws curveballs, layoffs, health bills, or market drops. Example, Lisa, 38, had a maxed 401k and felt on track. When her company downsized, contributions stalled and balances dropped. Thanks to her freelance business and some royalties from digital products, she could continue investing and cover expenses. No panic. Multiple streams make the difference between surviving and thriving. Third, understand asset allocation. Don't obsess over minor shifts between fund categories. Focus on a balance between growth and risk. Include cash flow assets, anything that generates actual money monthly, like rental properties, dividend stocks, small businesses, not just paper gains in a retirement account. This reduces reliance on the market for your lifestyle. Fourth, treat your 401k as the foundation, not the engine. It preserves and grows capital efficiently, but it won't create wealth alone. Real freedom comes from combining your 401k with assets you control and multiple income streams. Finally, consistency beats cleverness. Showing up, investing steadily, and layering strategies, income growth, diversification, cash flow assets, 401k contributions, creates real financial control. Safety and convenience are fine, but they won't make you wealthy. Build a system you control with your hands on the wheel. Your 401k isn't evil. It isn't a scam. It's just incomplete. Relying on it alone is like expecting a house to stand with only a foundation. Useful, but walls, plumbing, and roof require more. The 401k is your foundation. Your wealth comes from multiple income streams, cash flow assets, and controlled investments outside retirement accounts. Think of your 401k as a floor, not a ceiling. Want a ceiling that reflects the life you've worked for? Build pillars around it. Assets with real cash flow, side income, and tax-advantaged accounts like Roth IRA 401k. Don't measure success by a single number in a locked account. The 401k can preserve wealth, but it can't create freedom alone. Combine it with actionable strategies, and suddenly, you're no longer a passenger. You're the pilot, navigating your financial future with multiple levers of control. That's it for today. I'm Jack Miller. I hope this breakdown was eye-opening. My goal isn't to scare you, but to give you the clarity you need to build a system that works for you, not the other way around. We have a lot more deep dives and real-world strategies coming your way, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out or lose track of the insights that actually move the needle.